Computer.
Oh, I'm not talking to anybody yet.
There. I'm not talking to anybody yet.
Let's see what's happening over on Facebook.
Okay, let's see what's happening over on Facebook.
So, all right, see, it's taking its time. That's why I wanted to do this early, because it's...
All right, see, it's taking its time. That's why I wanted to do this early, because it's... There's like nothing up there.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
What time do we have? We have 12:59, so we're going to start here in just a minute.
Okay. What time do we have? We have 12:59, so we're going to start here in just a minute.
Computer working. Okay, cool. I think we're on.
If only I can get my...
So Andy, you ready?
Computer working. Okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
I think we're on.
I can barely hear you.
So Andy, you ready?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
It is Wednesday, week 4, coming from Ohio, and this is QTalk with QTalk Live, streaming both on
Wednesday,
Facebook
week 4,
and on
coming
Twitch.
from Ohio, and this is QTalk with QTalk
a work
Live,
in progress. So if you are currently
Facebook
on Twitch right now,
and
we're not
Twitch,
really answering any chats there, so you can talk amongst yourselves.
A work in
and
progress.
I will go back
so
and read
if
the
you
chat
are
later
currently
to
on
see
Twitch
if
right now,
anything,
we're not really answering any chats there, so you can talk amongst yourselves.
But in any case,
and
what
I
we're
will go
doing
back
right now
and
is we're
read the chat
testing
later to see if
new
there's
software,
anything
and as you can see, this is also very new that you
that
can,
I need to know. But
and
in
you
any
can
case,
see
so what we're
me,
doing
right?
right now is
you
we're
can see
testing
me, and you
out
can see my workspace,
new
right?
software,
There's a double
and
screen.
as you can see, this is
that
also
correct?
very new. That you can, Andy, you can see me, right? You can see me, and you can see my workspace.
It's not up
right?
on
There's a
Facebook
double screen.
yet. Okay,
is that
see,
correct?
So this is why I decided to do it early. So
it's not up on Facebook yet. Okay, see, so this is why I decided to do it early.
Okay, good. So yeah, it's interesting how long it took for all this to come together. We started this.
So,
my
so yeah,
says
it's interesting how long it took for all this to come together. We started
anyway,
this,
so I found a piece of software
my ticker
that
says I've
allows
been
me
on
to do this
already
double
for
screen
3 minutes,
thing.
but I
I've
know
switched
it's
up the cameras to see how.
But anyway, so I found a piece
so
of software
webcam
that allows me to do this
one,
double screen thing. I've switched up the
this is
cameras
actually
to
my
see
laptop,
how it would
because
work.
I
So
don't have a torch today. I am
webcam is now
using
that
the
one,
laptop,
and
because usually if
then
there's a torch here, I
this
don't
is
want to
actually
be
my
pointing
laptop
at my laptop.
because I don't have a
And
torch
then I
today.
also
I am
have Twitch,
risking
which
using
is
the
running
laptop because
over
usually if
here
there's a torch here, I
to the
don't want to be
side.
pointing
So,
at my laptop.
Again, just seeing
And
how
then
it works,
I also have
and
Twitch,
I'm going
which is running
try to
over
find
here
a piece of software, which I
to the
haven't been able to
side.
put
So,
my finger on as to which one
again,
it
just
is
seeing how
that
it
will
works,
actually allow me
and
to
I'm
push
going
to
to
both
try to
Twitch
find a piece of software, which I haven't been able to
Facebook
put my
Live.
finger on as
So
to
you're
which one
probably
it is
wondering
that
why
will actually allow me to push to
I'm
both
doing both
Twitch
Facebook Live and Twitch.
Facebook Live.
Several
so you're probably
reasons.
wondering
First
why
and foremost, it's because
I'm doing both
Twitch
Facebook
will allow me
Live
to
and Twitch.
monetize. And
several reasons.
let's be honest, I've been sharing this all along the way.
It's because
what
Twitch
we're trying
will
to
allow
do
me
is
to monetize.
we need to create some sort of income for ourselves.
Let's be honest, I've been sharing this all along the
everything
way.
has changed
that,
for us, and the
what
shows
we're trying to do is
gone right
we need
now,
to
and
create
we
some
have
sort
no
of
stream
income
of
for
revenue. So
ourselves
we're trying to
because
figure out how to create some sort
everything
of
has
revenue.
changed for us, and the shows are gone right now, and we have no stream of revenue. So we're trying to figure out how to create some sort of revenue.
That is correct. There is no double screen on Twitch right now.
I'm sorry, what was that?
What you're actually viewing on with the Twitch is
that is correct. There is no double screen on Twitch right now because
cell phone.
You're actually viewing on.
So you're only going to get one
Twitch
screen on Twitch
people
for right
who
now.
are commenting
is
so that
on
you're on
Facebook,
another
you'll get the double
cell
screen where you see me
okay?
and you get
so you're only
going to
get one screen on Twitch for right
workspace.
now.
So
on
the reason why we're doing
Facebook,
both is for monetizing reasons
and you get to
trying
see
to get that rolling and get that working.
So the reason why we're doing both is for monetizing
really high
and trying to get that rolling and get that
fast as I
working.
can to
There
understand
seems
the
to
system.
be a lot of
the
learning curve is really
noticed,
high, and
Twitch is actually
I'm ramping up as fast as I can to understand the system.
Much like
as
YouTube
some of you guys have noticed,
but if you
Twitch
put
is
into the search
actually
box,
a gaming
makers and
platform.
crafters, you'll find that
It's
there's
very
a lot of
much
people
like
me on there.
YouTube for gamers. But
we're
if
feeling
we
it
come
out
to the
and we're
search
trying to
box,
understand how to make
makers
it work.
and crafters, you'll find that there's a lot of people like me on there.
Everyone who's
so
coming along.
We're feeling it out, and we're trying to understand how to make it work.
I know some of you
and I
saw
really
me
appreciate
yesterday.
everyone
who's
coming along to
test out the system
to help out and help test.
Thank you for that.
I know some of you
and if you're
saw
not on
me
Twitch
yesterday.
Point, I was
twitching yesterday just to test out the system, and you popped on. Thank you for that.
Free
and if you're not on Twitch at this point, it's actually very easy to sign up. It's twitch.tv,
if you would please
and
do
it's a
favor,
free
I've got
registration, and you also get free subscriptions through your Amazon Prime. If you would please do me the favor, I've got to get up to 50 followers to be able to do much more with this account.
Just
so
for the month,
do me a favor and just
at least get me started.
Follow button, and
because you know we can't buy followers, unlike
just for the month.
Facebook, where you can buy thousands of followers if you want to, which I have
because you know we can't buy followers, unlike
anyway,
Facebook,
so
where you can buy thousands of followers if you want to, which I have yet
another
to do.
piece of technology news right now
but anyway,
is that
so I'm asking for just a little bit of help.
I'm going to start
another piece of technology news right now is that
Friday, and we're going to do.
I'm going to start the first Zoom class next Friday, and we're going to do.
And then we're going to try to see.
This is the Perigee ring. Okay.
So it goes all the way around a couple times.
And then we're going to try. Let's see. Maybe it's clearer over here.
3 cameras.
Okay. So it goes all the way around.
So it's a simple project, and I think it's a good little introductory project to get going on Zoom. I have an introductory price.
It's a simple project, and I think it's a good little introductory project to get going on Zoom. I have an introductory price. It's listed on the website. I've posted all the links on the Facebook Live and the details. I haven't figured out how to do it on Twitch yet, but I will as soon as I figure it out. But you will have the option of buying a kit, with the Zoom or just the Zoom.
Sound on Twitch.
You're getting dual sound on Twitch.
Sound here. Oh, let me stop. Let me get rid of this.
Oh, wait a second. You've got sound here. Oh, let me stop.
Okay.
Let me get rid of this. How do I? Oops. Allow apps. Okay. Okay. Do I have sound now? Okay, so sorry, I know Andy's like, keep talking, I can't tell. So is my sound coming through now? Is it working? Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry? Oh, can somebody post a something on Facebook to tell me whether or not you hear double sound? Let's see. Okay, so and I'm sorry, what about the sound? Okay, great, yay. So we're down to 1 sound. Thank you very much for letting me know that. I appreciate that. Okay, so, all right. So that's so the Zoom. So the ring, it is on the website at this point. There is a link for it if you want to join me on Zoom next week. There is a, I think I did a $15 discount from what it will be forthgoing. It's going to be 2 sessions, and there is a kit, and it's as shown. If you prefer a different stone, reach out to me. I have a couple other options, and I will send you a picture of it for the other options, okay? And the price is going to be the same for the other options. All right, that said, I'm gonna move forward to what we're doing today. So just to let you know, the sound on Twitch, yeah, it's probably going to be intermittent because we have a lot of other sound going on, and it's just seems to be how that mic works for now. Again, until we figure that out, we're gonna keep moving on that, okay? So what are we discussing today? What we're discussing is, actually, I wonder if I can do it this way, hold on. Is that better for now? I don't know. Nope, you're gonna see the sky. Okay, so, switch that. Okay, so anyway, that said, I was adjusting cameras. So we're talking about finishing today. And the reason why we're talking about finishing is it's been brought up to me several times by students that there's never seems to be enough time to do finishing in a very detailed way in classes, because at the end of a class, instructors have a tendency to rush and push you out the door and say, yeah, you can finish it at home. Yeah, it's easy, it's sanding, it's whatever. And that you never really get to refine your finishing. So I thought it was a really good opportunity to talk about it on one of these lives, because it allows me to just go through it in detail. So finishing. You know what? I think the difference between one technician and another is in the finishing. And it's not even just the design. Even if you take the same exact design and you hand it to two different people for finishing, the person who spends more time on it wins every single time. You can see the difference. I mean, you just put it side by side and you will see it every single time. Whoever took the time out to just really carefully finish it. Okay, it's sort of like decorating a cake. You can tell who put a lot of love into it and who just slapped it together and took frosting out of a jar. That kind of thing. You can see it. Aside from tasting it, you can totally see it. And that's where we are. So, you know, I also find that a lot of people, you know, you've been working for several hours and you're finally seeing that light at the end of the tunnel and you see your project and it's going to be great. And then you just sort of get sloppy because you just want to be done. You've spent so many days or hours on it, you just want to be done. But for me, that is when you need to put in the most care, because that's how you're going to see a great project. And also, the person who puts in the hours into finishing, I can sit here and futz with a piece for hours. Actually, it would make me happy too. And that person will always make more money for that piece, or they'll command more money, because you can see it in the polish and you can see it in the refinement of the piece. So then the argument of the tumbler, okay, brings me right into tumbling. So when I first started doing this, I was taught in a neoclassical way. Everything was by hand, every step of the way. There was like no such thing as just throw it in the tumbler. Okay, and then somewhere in there, shortly thereafter, I discovered the tumbler. I went, oh my gosh, just throw it in the tumbler. It's great. It seems to do everything. The longer you throw it in, the better it is. And then somebody told me it work hardens the piece. Okay, you know what I discovered? What I discovered is that when I started doing this over 12 years ago, metalsmithing was really a bit of a hybrid, and it was for people who were a little bit more serious. And then as the years went, crafters jumped into this. Oh, I don't know why my phone is ringing. Crafters jumped into this, and then it's just the easiest thing to do is to put it in a tumbler. And so that's what they're doing, is they just throw it in a tumbler because it's easier, and then they don't have to go through all these hoops of finishing. That's lovely. Again, I think that's the difference between an everyday crafter and a designer, really. So if you want to shortcut it, throw it in the tumbler. But if you want to take it to that next step, you finish it by hand. You go through the steps of polishing, you go through the steps of sanding until you get it there, okay? But traditionally, tumbling is reserved for chains. Why? Because chains are these tiny little pieces. And what are the chances you're gonna get steel wool or any of these little parts into those tiny little places? You can't, okay? It's just not possible to get it there, and really it's not practical. So that's why you always tumble chain. But then comes then comes the argument of hardening. So you have all these people who say, oh, you throw it in the tumbler, it'll harden the piece. The truth of the matter is it's not through and through, okay? It may just very slightly surface harden it. but it is not through and through. True hardening, you're going to have to put a mallet to it. I'm sorry, Andy, what did you say? So next up, I understand that the sound is out of sync. I'm not really sure why. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. So anyway, so that's the deal with tumbling. But let's talk about what it is anyway, just so you know. Okay, so basically, a tumbler is a rock tumbler. Remember back in the day, 70s, 80s, people were tumbling rocks. It's just a rock tumbler. It's a barrel with a motor, and all it does is it just spins. Okay, so there's the rotary tumbler or there's a vibratory tumbler. We're not even going to go into the pin tumblers and whatnot. But anyway, so all it's doing is it's vibrating and shaking, and it's burnishing the surface of the metal. That's all. And what you put in it is things like stainless steel shot, okay? And this is a jeweler's mix, and it has different shapes and pins and things like that in it, so it gets into all the little nooks and crannies, okay? If you want to start off with tumbling and then do hand polishing, I don't see why you couldn't do that. It sort of gets into the tiny little places and gets you there a little bit faster, but then you're going to need to go through and do some hand polishing. But in your tumbler, you're going to put this stainless steel mix, jeweler's mix shot, and then you're going to need some sort of lubricant, we'll call it, okay? So I use Dawn liquid soap. Why? Because it's natural, it's biodegradable. A lot of people use tumbling solution, but the one piece of advice that I am going to give is that the tumbling solution suggests that you keep the shot in the solution permanently, that you really don't take it out and you don't mix it. Problem is, over time, despite the fact that this is stainless steel, it will rust. It's just a matter of time. Stainless steel is not 100% iron free. There's always iron in it, if some percentage, and that's what's going to cause your rust. So you do need to take it out. So for me, oops, sorry. So you can see I'm in a strainer, and this is actually a piece of leftover screening from this sliding glass door. And so I pour it out every time. I use a few drops of Dawn liquid soap, and I cover it with water, and it works just fine. And I've never had a problem with it. Okay, so that's what tumbling is about. And you know, I know lots of people who keep it in the solution, and really you're dumping that shot within 3 to 4 years. I've had this shot for over 10 years now. So I just pour it out, I rinse it with some water, and move on. So that is tumbling in a nutshell, okay? Then comes sandpaper and sanding, okay? So I actually wrote a blog on sandpaper. It's on my website, qfomgray.com. I learned this the hard way, and I'm just, going to share it here. Not all sandpaper is made the same. Apparently, there is a difference between domestic, meaning US made sandpaper, and Polish sandpaper, and I believe there's even Chinese, but mostly, believe it or not, sandpaper is made in the US and in Poland. And what's the difference? You would think that it should all be the same, right? It isn't, because it's about the grit. Apparently, 400 grit in the US is different from 400 grit in Poland. And what does grit refer to anyway? It's the number of grains per, I want to say it's inch, but I don't think so. So per whatever square that is. And there was a quick question regarding the shot. Yes, I rinse it out with water and I let it dry and I let it sit out. I don't put it back in the barrel until it's dried out. So the sandpaper, so what's interesting is the Polish sandpaper, 400 grit, is actually probably more like 200 or 300. It's a lot heavier than our 400 grit. So how do you know what you have purchased? You look on the back. It tells you where it's made. And so what if you have the Polish stuff? Use it. It's okay. But what you want to do is you want to consistently buy from the same country. Therefore, it will keep your sandpaper consistent, so that you don't buy 400 from Poland and then you buy 500 from the US, and then all of a sudden it's like there's a big disparity between them. So then the progression is better, or is more correct, we'll say. Okay, so that's the scoop on sandpaper. Now, sandpaper also comes in wet dry, and it comes in just plain old dry. The wet dry, of course, is going to cost more because you can use it wet and dry. If you do buy the wet dry, here's a tip. Okay, you can actually wash it out. Why would you ever wash out sandpaper? Because it'll last longer. Imagine that. So you can actually rinse this under some water and take off all the little shavings and let it dry out and keep going on it. Okay, so that's a tip on sandpaper. Now, what grit sandpaper do you use? I was always taught to use 400, 500, 600. So it depends on what kind of finish you're looking for, okay? So if you're looking for a high polish, you have to progress it down to at least 600, if not higher. Now remember, the higher the number, the finer the sandpaper. The lower the number, the coarser it is, because of how big those little grains are on the sandpaper, okay? So so I use 400, 500, and 600 to get to a high polish. And what does that mean? Why do I use each one of those? Okay, because when you're sanding for a high polish, you want to start with with the lowest number. So you start with 400. It is the coarsest, right, out of the three. And you want to work out all the scratches until the surface is even to that paper, that grit. And then once everything's nice and even and you've worked out all the scratches, then you move to 500 and you work the surface once again. You go to 600, there you go, and then you go to polish, and that will give you a nice mirror polish, okay? If you want a matte finish, just leave it at 400. If you want an even more matte finish, then take it to 500. I think it's too reflective in here to see that, or I'm sorry, take it to 150. So this one, I don't think you can see it, but this one was done in 150, so you can actually see the hashes. I did it in 2 different directions so that you can see the hashes, and I'll show you here on Twitter. Okay, so it's going in the direction. So I actually use sandpaper as a texturing technique. Okay, so matte and that kind of thing, it's all very personal to the design and what you want to accomplish from it. Okay, so then comes polishing compound. Okay, so once you've sanded everything, you want to go to a polishing compound. So, so a friend of mine was talking to me about polishing compound and how confusing it is, and there's so much out there, and I thought that I knew what I needed to know about polishing compound until last night. I did a lot of reading last night. I must have been on 10 different sites reading, from industrial sites to jeweler sites, reading about polishing compound. And one thing is for sure, it is just like sandpaper. There is no consistency with it, in that it depends on the manufacturer. So the manufacturer is the one that's going to tell you what it is. And so switching between manufacturers is probably not advisable. It's really a weird thing. And again, I didn't learn this until last night either. But pretty much we talk in the jewelry world, we talk a lot about jeweler's rouge, or the red rouge, or AAA. Believe it or not, red rouge and AAA are 2 different things. And that is a very common polish that jewelers use. And even from the red, and even with the polishing compound, there is a progression like you have with sandpaper. So you want to start with the coarsest, and then you work to the finest to get to whatever finish that you are looking for. And what's interesting is these polishing compounds, again, they're basically made of an abrasive and some sort of a, shall we say, grease or wax, okay, most of the time. Then there's also dry compound that you can use. Now, with every compound, that the grit goes down. Now, what you need to know about it is, even though it's a polishing compound, is what we would refer it as, it does cut. What does that mean, cut? That means that if you sit here long enough and you just keep working it and working it and working it, it is going to cut through the metal. It will leave divots, and it will absolutely make pits if you just work it for too long. So you have to be careful regardless of what you do, regardless of how fine the compound is, regardless if it is finishing compound, it will keep cutting and cutting, because that's its job. It's just working the surface and moving it. And honestly, it's the same thing as you're sitting here with a ring and you rub it with your hands. You don't think about it, but you know, sometimes the rings do wear. That's because we're rubbing on it all the time, and you don't think that your hands are cutting anything, but it does. Okay, so the confusion with the compound, oh, my head was absolutely spinning last night with all this different compounds and whatnot. You know, how many times did I read, this is preference, that everyone is going to tell you something different? Like, all right, well, we're back to that again. So here it is. Here's my preference. I just go with one, okay? I use EuroLustre, and that makes me happy. And that is, you know, it's considered a finishing compound, and I don't even worry about anything else. I don't work the steps. I don't use more than one. It just makes it simple, and it has been working for a very long time. And what's sort of crazy is, so we sell it in this 1 pound container, or one pound tube. And, you know, through all these years of teaching, I still haven't finished this through all of my classes. So try not to buy too much of this stuff, because it lasts like for a very, very long time. And here you can see I've even cut a small piece down for myself, just make it a little bit more manageable on my workbench. So you know, and compound is actually really inexpensive. That EuroLustre is only $8, so it'll get you there, and it'll last a really long time. We'll go through what you use it with here in a second, okay? Okay, any questions on the compound and the sandpaper? I think I have covered that, right? So then comes, what do you use with said compound and sandpaper? Okay, or no, sorry, not sandpaper, with the compound. So with the compound, there's lots of different choices, okay? So the bottom line here too is also preference, but it's what you're trying to accomplish. Are you actually trying to cut? Are you trying to take out a gouge or something? You can do it. It takes a long time, but you can do it with polishing compound. If you want it to be aggressive, then you want to use something like this, okay? This is a felt bobbin, all right? And it's pretty tight, and it's pretty hard, okay? And the harder this is that you use, the more aggressive it is. So then comes your, you know, I should grab a new one. Comes the muslin wheels, all right? Even there is, believe it or not, a distinction in the muslin wheels. And I will show you. So this is a new one, okay? I'll show you there. And this is a used one. And this is a used one. Okay. So here you'll see this one is only stitched in the middle, but these are really small. When you get into the bigger ones, they get into different types of stitching. All right. So if you actually have a large buffing wheel, there seems to be many more options for the large buffing wheels. Okay. So the softer this is, and the more pliable this is, then the less aggressive it is. So if you have more stitching in here, then this will get more aggressive, like the bobbin, okay, like the felt bobbin. So there's also the choice of a leather chamois. So the leather chamois is typically used for the final. It's a bit expensive, and it's it's really, really soft, okay? And some people don't even use it with compound. They just use it straight up, and believe it or not, it will actually do a bit of buffing, okay? So that's the difference with the muslin wheels. So a couple things that you need to know about how to use this is you don't want to be too aggressive with it. So for me, because I don't have the footprint, despite what you see in the background here, I don't have the footprint for a big buffing wheel. So I'm using this on my flex shaft. And so these come mounted and unmounted, meaning, so this is mounted, it's already on a shank, and this is unmounted. So then you would need to get a mandrel to put that on, okay? So you just put it in. Actually, I'm not gonna use this one. I'll use this one. So we have the wheels on our website. And also I did put together a little quick start kit here, finishing kit, that we've never had before. So I put a link up there for you. So notice I'm tightening it in 2 spots. And so that is on the details in the Facebook Live, if you're looking for it. The kit is a special order. Okay, so here I put the muslin wheel onto my flex shaft end, and all you do is you take out your compound and you just embed it just a little bit, and you'll see, you could probably see that it picked up some of the white compound, and then you're just going to approach the piece. I need a piece. Oh, we'll do this one. Okay, and put it in here, and you just run it. So here's the scoop. If you run this too gently, nothing will happen. You do need to apply pressure on it. However, if you put too much pressure on it, like this one, okay, you can see that the wheel has gotten really hard. And that's because the wax in the compound has binded together with the fibers, or the wax or the grease, whatever you want to call it, okay, has binded the fibers of the muslin together, okay. And it now, because it's done that, you can see this shiny surface on your wheel that you can, it becomes very close to a felt bobbin, okay. And I forgot. So what's really nice is to have gloves when you're doing this, because, you know, we talk about jewelers' hands. If you look at the old-time jewelers' hands, are sort of like a plumber, and it is it's all nice and black. If you want to save your manicure, I would invest in a pair of gloves. These are super grip gloves, which is nice, and you just apply a little bit of pressure onto your piece, and you can probably see the difference in the shine really quick between here and here. This piece has been sitting around a little bit. See, you can see it here. I'm going to show you guys over here too on Twitch. Okay, there it is, and you can see how shiny that is. Okay, and you can do this to your heart's content. You know, quick story here is we were demoing this at a show years ago, about 8 years ago. I remember this in Santa Fe, and you know how people are like, oh, you know, the pink solution, let me have your ring, I'll clean it for you and make it look really pretty. Well, I was pulling the same thing, but I was doing it like this. It's like, oh yeah, let me have your ring, I'll clean it for you. And so, you know, there were people standing around, and I saw this woman, she had a ring. I said, hey, I'll polish your ring for you. And she goes, oh, it's a Cartier. Like, how dare you suggest you would touch my ring? I'm like, okay. I said, believe it or not, this is a professional way of doing it. It's no different than how you would do it if you took it to Cartier. The only difference is in this wheel. So they would have a larger buffing wheel, and I'm just using a tiny little thing. Needless to say, I didn't polish her ring. Let's just not get myself into that liability. Anyway, so if you get any of these black spots, I don't know if you can see that on there, but that is just grease, okay? And that's easily removed. Don't worry about it. That is just grease, and you can just clean it off with some Dawn liquid soap or put it in your sonic ultrasonic cleaner that will take that off too. Okay, if you're only getting black on there, you know, it's one of two things. It will happen if you are pressing too hard, or it will happen if you are not pressing hard enough and you're just moving dirt around. And it's turning black because it's basically dirt. Okay, it's basically dirt and grease that's coming together and moving around. If you are doing different metals, the advice is that you have a bobbin for every metal and you want to mark it. You do not want to cross-contaminate these, because yes, you can churn a silver piece gold by using a gold buffing wheel on your silver. But if that's what you want, it'll work. Another thing too, believe it or not, I personally have never done this because I believe silver is cheap, but believe it or not, your professionals will save these and they will churn it in. But they're typically, your commercial users are using this with gold, and there is gold that is embedded into these bobbins, and so they will actually churn these in for money, and you can make a pretty decent amount of money if you collect enough of these. But remember, they're also using the bigger wheels. You can do it with you can save it with these little ones. Don't ask me where to send it in. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the refineries will take it back, and then you can go from there. Somebody's beeping. I don't know who. Okay, so anyway, so that's another tip for you on the bobbing, the muslin wheels. Okay, so regarding the other parts and pieces, let's talk about those. And just to let you know, again, you know, these are so inexpensive that if you are doing different metals, you know, they're only about $2.50, and so you can definitely, you should buy several, okay? So you have all of these other, these other parts and pieces, and people are always asking what they're used for and why. Okay, so let's start with these fun things. Okay, so this looks like a Brillo pad, and it is used to create a matte surface, and they do come in different abrasives. But a student brought this up to me and said, you know, you can use a Brillo pad. And I said, yeah, you know, you can take a Brillo pad out and you can just use it by hand. But then she said, you know, you can cut it and put it on a mandrel. Oh, isn't that brilliant? Now, we all love things mechanical, at least I do anyway, because it would just make life a lot easier. So if you have these mandrels, check this out. I'm going to take this one out. Oh, I guess I could have taken one out without the sanding disc in it. Cut a little piece like so. Okay, show you. And just put this down the middle. Put it down the middle like so. And attach it. I've done this several times since it's been a year and a half. Thank you, Jackie. It's been great. And it's a lot cheaper. So that's why I decided not to add one of these in the kits. I mean, these are like $3 and they don't even last that long. So, hey, why not just cut up a Brillo pad and do this for yourself? It's only going to cost you 10 cents, right? So that's a trick. So these are for just making a matte surface, okay? The brass brushes. There's this one, and then there's an end brush. See these two different ones. Okay, and I'll show you guys over there too. Now, I like using these because it's a first step. You know, you can use a brass brush, of course, when you're finishing. So when it comes out of the pickle, I have a tendency to dry it. A lot of people like to brass brush it to clean it up before they start their finishing work, and that's great. But it's so much easier to use it just on a flex shaft. And it just happens really, really quickly. So I was working on this piece yesterday. Okay, So this is going to be a metal immersion piece, and I'm going to show everybody over here on Twitch too. Okay, and so you can see it's hollow inside. So it was really nice to be able to have an end brush like so that can get inside of here, instead of having to try to find a Q-tip and wrapping sandpaper or steel wool in there and whatnot. So you see, I'll show everybody on Twitch too. So I can get into all these little places just to get the cleaning going. Okay, so that's why I like the brass brush. Word to the wise regarding the brass brush: you get too aggressive with it, meaning you push really hard on it, what's going to happen is you will, believe it or not, you will transfer that yellow color right onto the metal. Learn that the hard way too. So don't get too aggressive with the brass brush. They do also come in steel, so the steel is a bit harder, and it does create more of a matte finish. Can you stop there with the finishing? Absolutely. It is a look. It leaves a brushed look. Okay, but as we progressively get there, it's going to get finer and finer for that mirror finish is what we're trying to get to. Okay, so then you have the sanding wheels. All right, so there's two different sanding wheels. There is the snap-on, which is great. So this is tension set with a snap mandrel, and you just pop it right on. You know, can I use these sanding wheels with water? I actually don't know. I haven't thought about it. I haven't checked. So anyway, and then the other sanding wheel, you have to screw it on. So I like these because they're just really convenient. Sanding discs are the same as sandpaper, and they come in different grits. However, they don't tell you what the grits are. They tell you it's coarse, medium, and fine. I'm like, define fine to me, okay? First of all, I would never ever buy coarse, not for jewelry, because it's somewhere around, I don't know, 100, 150. You actually have to sort of call them to find that number. And because depending on the manufacturer, everybody defines that differently. It's sort of like when somebody used to come into the bead store and say, I'm looking for a small bead. As far as I'm concerned, everything in my store is small. So same thing with the sandpaper and how they describe it. It's too, so it's up to the manufacturer to determine what they think fine is. So I would just call. So I added these to the kit just to have a bit of sandpaper, and if I remember correctly, it's about 250. I decided to go with the finest that I could get my hands on because I still think 250 is incredibly aggressive. A question regarding using the brush, the brass brush with water. Yes, you can use it with water, absolutely. So another tip here regarding the sanding disc, okay, is a lot of people use it like this, right? And so we're just gonna, you know, sand away just like that. But what people don't think of is you can use it upside down. This one should be thrown away, but anyway, it's a little worn. So you can just flip it over, and sometimes it's just easier. Oh lordy. Okay, flip it over. Again, these are tension set. You know what I like to do? Here's a tip. I like to put it on something like this, something that's sort of soft. Okay, and I push it in. Ha! Oops. Hello? Why aren't you going in today? Hi. There it is. Did you hear it snap? Okay, so I like to put on something soft. It's a little bit easier to do that. So I put it in upside down because sometimes it's easier to work this way. Now remember, it is sandpaper, so it is going to be cutting. Be careful. Don't put any gouges in it. These also come in different sizes, okay? So that's what a sanding disc is for. And a lot of times I like to use these to get into like the little tiny places, okay, where I can't seem to get in there with my file. And while we're talking about sanding, another trick is you can use a nail file. It's really nice to get in there also. Nail files for me are expensive. And again, if you know me, you know I'm a little on the cheap side. You can put it on a popsicle stick, put some sandpaper on a popsicle stick and do the same thing, okay? So that is the sanding disc. And then you have, let's see, what do we want to use next? So all these are for sanding. So this is a sanding arbor with a sanding band in a couple sizes. And same problem. It's always the sandpaper is, for me, very aggressive. So the only time I really use these sanding products is when I have a lot to take down. And like if you want to take the inside of a ring down, this is a very quick and easy way to do it, or clean the inside, and I don't need to bring it to a high polish. So that's what I'll use it for, okay? And then comes these these wonderful silicone discs. I love these things. These come in 4 or 5 different grits. Again, it's somewhere like, you know, coarse, medium, fine, extra fine. But at least the silicone discs are not like the sandpaper. These go down to the micron. So the fine, I believe, is a 6 micron, okay? And then the coarse is about, what was I thinking? About a 400 is the coarse. So it's still really nice and gentle. I love these silicone discs. They do, any of the silicone products actually, I really love them because they are gentle, and they do, but yet they do their job, and they do the job quickly. And I'll show you how that works. And I'm going to show you a trick on it too. Actually, I'll use this one. Okay. So you can see the difference. Let's see if I can find the angle. Yep. So the difference in the two, okay, is this one is newer and this one's older, and it's become a bit blunt. And let's see if I can show everybody on Twitch. Okay, so if that's happened, you can definitely refine the edge. And you see there's this one, which is the bullet one, okay, and you can see that it is not, does not have a tip on it. So what you can do is you take out a little sandpaper. I would get something a bit more aggressive, like the 100 sandpaper, and oops, and spin it on there. So find an angle like so on the sandpaper, see, and it will refine that edge to bring it back to that nice knife edge that you want. And the same thing for the bullet or any of the other shapes that you want to bring your shape back. You can just put it on like 100, 150, 200 sandpaper is really nice for that. Okay, so here, this piece I was working on yesterday, so I have a jump ring on the back of that, right? And you can see that. So if I wanted to get in there, instead of, you know, taking out my sandpaper and trying to get into the spot, which I sort of can, but it's painful. See, it's just a little painful. I can just take out my silicone disc with that knife edge, and I can go right in there. You see that? So I can get right in there, and I just keep working it until I'm happy. And what's nice too is, especially when it's nice and thin, meaning the knife edge, when it's nice and thin, there is some flex to it, and I can just clean up all these edges right up to that, right up to the jump ring. And then after that, I can polish and do whatever I want. It's the same concept here as a sandpaper. Is you would buy the different grits, and then you would grit it down depending on how big your gouge is or whatever scratches you're trying to take out. Is you start with the heaviest and then you work down to your finest, okay? And that's the story on the silicone. Okay, and then there is these beautiful things. These are 3M radial bristle brushes. As you can see, I got them from Rio because really I'm not clear that anybody's doing any better on the pricing. It's even at wholesale, I think we save $1, so which means you'll never want to buy it from us. Let's just be honest, okay? Yeah, it's just awful. But they are something like, for each one of these, they're something like $1.25 a piece. So when you're using it, you need to use somewhere between 3 and 6 pieces. So it gets a little bit pricey. So since they are so pricey, let's make sure you're using this correctly. Okay. So first of all, you're going to need these mandrels to put them into the screw mandrels. Okay. And I'll show you there. So just to keep the annoyance down, if you buy a whole pack of different different radial discs, you probably want to have a mandrel for each one of these colors, and so that you don't have to continue to just take these out and put them back on, so you can just switch it out as you go. Like everything else, there's grits to these, and you're going to work it down depending on where you start and what you want to end up with. Some people do, by the way, use these 100%. They don't even go into buffing compound because the finest one is a 1 micron. So it's a 1 micron on that. So anyway, so when you put this on, you need to make sure, I want to see if you can see that. Oops. Don't know why Andy has lost his sound, but okay. So can you see that? Do you see? If you're looking down at the mandrel, it should be running like this, clockwise. The bristles, can you see? Actually, maybe it's too refined. And I'll show you on Twitch here in a second. So it should be running in that manner. Did I do that right? I'm sorry. Do that one more time. There. Okay. So it should be going clockwise. Can you see that? All right. So you want to make sure that it is running in this clockwise motion because of how it runs on the flex shaft, because you want this to run with your piece like so. You don't want it to run this, oops, this direction. So you don't want to flip this over and go against the bristles. It'll wear on the bristles and it will break the pieces. So I'll show you over here. You want it to run like this, not against the bristles, okay? They do last a fairly long time, but I'm also really stingy as to when I use them. And they work really great. You can use, depending on how big your piece is and what you're looking for, these come in different sizes, but that will determine, depending on your piece, that will determine the size that you buy, and the number of discs that you use, okay, or brushes that you use. So here I actually have 5. I have 5 in here. But they say that the very least that you should use is 3, and to get the most benefit out of it. What's so great about these is it gets into the tiniest of little places, just right into the nooks and crannies of what we are doing here. Okay, and that's what's really nice about the bristle discs and the 3M product. It is a solid product. Okay, so does anybody have any questions so far? So good. We're still working through this. Okay, so depending on what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, determines what grit that you're going to start off with. If you have a lot of gouges, then you're going to go with you're going to go with the heaviest that you have, and then work your way through until the gouge is gone. So you'll start with like a 400, maybe even like a 300. I am don't really like to go into the 200s much because it's a scary prospect. So then you're going to get those gouges out, and then you're going to slowly but surely refine your way through until you get to the final finish that you're looking for. Just every single step going finer and finer. I'm sorry, Andy, what was the question? Okay, so the question is, what is the finishing technique I prefer and why? It sort of depends on the piece and what I'm trying to do. First of all, I'm not a big fan of mirror finish. You'll see most of my pieces are not mirror finish. And it's not because I'm lazy, but it is because I don't like shiny, shiny silver. I prefer it to be matte. I don't know, I just have this preference to matte. But unfortunately, I sort of ebb and flow with every piece depending on how small and how intricate it is. So for instance, this piece, okay? This piece yesterday, as I was working through, first thing I did was I brass brushed it. I can guarantee you I never brass brushed this piece. All right. I would not, even if I was to make this again, I would not brass brush this piece because I don't feel a need to do that. Okay. So I brass brushed this piece, and then I noticed that there were lots of scratches and gouges. And because I wanted to make this seamless here, because this is two pieces put together, right? You can see that? It's two pieces put together. I'll show you guys there. For each component, okay? So there was a seam here. And so I had to get really aggressive with that seam to take it apart, but I didn't want to use my file. Files are absolutely great. If you have, and for something like this, I would have gone to a much finer file, something probably like a 5 or 6, right, to start off with. But because it's so small, I think the file is a little bit too aggressive and scary. Because another thing too is I have this jump ring back here, the bail. So if I was to file, my chances of hitting that would have been high. So that I decided not to use the file. Instead, what I did decide to do was I used one of these sanding discs because it was taking too long to sit here and hand sand it. And I decided that I would use the sanding disc first, or after I tried to hand sanding it and it was taking too long. So I took out the sanding disc and I worked down that edge to clean it up, okay? If you have not used the sanding disc before, I would practice on a piece I didn't care about to understand how quickly this works. Another thing is, you know, when I teach bezel setting, a lot of people ask me why they can't use a flex shaft to do the finishing. Even if it's the first time, and a lot of my beginner bezel setting classes, it is the first time doing a bezel set or something that refined, right? They're used to doing much more clunky things, which means they don't have the experience with sandpaper and sanding and filing. I don't let them use anything mechanical. Why? Because within a second, you're going to blow the whole piece. So until you get sandpaper in there by hand and you're working it, and you see and you understand how the metal moves and how it responds to sandpaper or to filing, you don't want to go mechanical. So try this first. If you're really new to this, do this with just sandpaper in your hands. I know it's long-winded, but you'll learn a lot from it. I promise you, you will learn a lot more from it. So the question is, do you wait till to polish after you set the stone? Absolutely. Absolutely. Polish is last. So you'll set this. I do a lot of my sanding up front, right? So all the rough sanding and get it down to 600, anneal it, pickle it, set it, and then polish it. That's how I would do it. So I was sanding all this, right? So I sanded all of this and I got my edge nice and clean. From there, I took off any bits of solder. Actually, I missed a little piece here. Any bits of solder is taken off. And then I went to a silicone wheel and I worked those areas again. Everything to get it nice and smooth is how I did this piece. I have a brush finish on it. So once I got all the little solders and all the edges smooth and I was happy, I came back with sandpaper. So I went with 600 sandpaper and I actually worked it like so. Okay. So I started with that, and then when I couldn't get into the tiny little areas, I switched out again to my radial bristle discs, okay, and got into the tiny little spots. You could have just skipped the sandpaper altogether and jumped right into the radial bristle brushes, or you could skip this altogether. This is again a much more matte look is what I'm accomplishing. And you know, also for me, I don't know, there's something very gratifying about sitting here and just sort of working all the finishing, because I can see it and I'm taking my time, and I see a little tiny scratch here, so I can just sit here and do this and take my time doing it. And a lot of times, so for me, the difference is I'm shooting this for a picture, and what happens is it gets magnified very quickly. Everybody else would have been just fine. You know, sell it off, give it away, whatever. No one would have seen it. But as soon as you put a camera on there and you're looking at it like really small, you know, it's just like, oh God, you can see that tiny little dot. So sitting here and just taking the time and doing it by hand allows me to see all the little imperfections a little bit better. For shooting, I'm a little bit more meticulous because of all the photography that I have to do on these pieces. But again, it allows you to have a much nicer finish. A couple other points here, tips regarding finishing. So on this piece especially, of course, you want to make sure that this is a cut edge. Of course, you want to make sure that there are no sharp edges. You can take that off very, very quickly, of course, with a file at an angle, right? Student files are a little rough, but it's a start. So you can start there, and again, you want to take out your sandpaper and you can refine that. This is also where you can take out your nail file that I've dropped, that I can't seem to get to. Oh. Sorry. Okay, it fell. There it is. And I also would work my nail file or on a popsicle stick, some sandpaper at an angle. And what's really nice, especially on cut edges, by giving it that little bit of a bevel on the edge, it just makes it that much more professional. Okay, so that is finishing the edges like so. If you have rough edges, another trick is you can take out your burnisher and burnish it. It's quick, it's easy, and it makes sense. So even on a piece like this, you can take out your burnisher and burnish those edges, and it will just give it a little bit more of a pop. And I'm digging that. And it gives it this really refined shine right along the edges. Okay, so that's nice. I'm gonna have to add that to this class. Anyway, so that's what burnishing's for. Some people do, believe it or not, sit here and burnish all of their metal, and it helps bring down the edges and whatnot. But burnishing is another technique that you can use to refine some of these edges. And wow, I'm really enjoying how that looks. Escapement files. I know what she's saying, and it's, let me get back to you on that one. It's not coming to me. I apologize. So the question was, when would you use escapement files? Oh, I can't think of it. Anyway, so a couple more little hybrid products here that are out there is that you can buy silicone pins, because we're always trying to get into these tiny little spots, right? You see that pin? Okay, and then you'll need a mandrel for that, like so. This goes on your flex shaft also. Oops. okay? And then you can refine that edge like a pencil on a piece of sandpaper. But what's nice about these is, again, it's all about getting into those tiny little spots. Is how small of a piece can we get to get into the really, really, really tight tight spots. Okay, so I think that's it. Finishing. It's about the time that you invest into it that you're going to get out of it. It's like anything else in life. Okay, so the more time you put into it, the more professional it's going to look. You can see the difference if you just go to a craft show and walk, or an art show and walk the art show and look between one crafter and another, or one jeweler and another. You can absolutely see how someone has taken their time. You do the progression thing regardless of what you're using, whether it's sandpaper, silicone discs, or compound. You want to do it in progression. It's if you're looking for that really, really refined finish. Okay. Question, Andy? I'm sorry, Andy? So the question was, well, what do you get in the kit? I added a couple of muslin wheels in there. There's some, I did the silicone disc. I have a picture up with all the pieces that you're going to get. The silicone discs were in there because I love them. And what else? Oh, I can't think. Oh, some sanding discs too, with the snap mandrel, because they're much more fun than the other ones. And I think that's it. There was something like 30 pieces in there, 35 pieces in there. But have a look. The link is there on our Facebook Live. In the meantime, that's about it that we have for today. Thanks for coming. Do me a favor, share this out there. If you have enjoyed this, that would be great. And Friday we're doing Flower Power. There are no kits left, but you can definitely join us. Next week I posted the first Zoom for next Friday. I will post today Monday's project. We're doing I'm calling it the concentric link. So it's a link. You can put a string through there and use it for however you want to use it. Andy, you had a question? Let's see, and then on Wednesday next week we're going to do riveting, cold connection, a departure from the torch, and then we're going to continue with this Twitch thing. Please follow me if you can. I'm going to go back on all the comments today and answer it directly, whether it is on Twitch or on Facebook, and see if we can continue to figure out how to work this out. If you have any experience on simulcasting on Twitch, do me a favor, or even Facebook, can you reach out to me? I've been doing a lot of research and I can't seem to get there fast enough, so some real life experience would be very helpful to me. Anyway, all right, it is Wednesday. It is still cold outside, but I'm gonna go out there because I haven't been out there in a few days, and try to do something outside. Thank you so much again for being here and visiting for an hour or so. It's just past 2, and playing along and getting through all of our technical issues. Hey, I will see you on Friday. Hey, yeah, Friday, 1 p.m. Okay, I don't even know how to end this. Let's see.